I'm going to go ahead and make up a pattern for some leather roses. I've made them before, but I don't have one of the patterns here because they're actually at my sister's house right now because she usually makes them. So I need to make up another pattern for it. And for that I'm going to use a compass because I'm going to base all the pattern on different size circles. And first I need a circle 3.5 inches in diameter, which means I'm going to start with the compass set at 1 3/4. And then they're going to get smaller from there. I'm going to need a 3 1/8, 2 3/4, a 2 3/8, and then a 2-inch circle. And I'll base all of my rose petal pieces on that. This is actually very similar to how blacksmith roses will be made. They can be iron or copper, and you can make a similar sort of pattern to use for that. Okay, now inside each of these circles, I should have marked my center point. You usually see where my compass was. Now I'm going to divide the two smallest ones into 3 parts, approximately equal parts. If you get off a little bit on it, it doesn't matter because we are making something that's a flower, it's natural. You'll have some imperfections and oddities. So I don't worry too much about getting this perfect equilateral triangle going on here. The next one up is easier. We'll just divide it into 4 pieces. And again, if we don't get a perfect right angle, not the end of the world, so we're not going to be too complicated there. The 2 largest circles, I'm going to put 5 lines in, which I always find to be a little bit trickier. Okay, now these are going to be the center lines of our petals for the rose pieces. Off of each of those, somewhere in the middle, I'm going to make kind of dotted lines to divide that. Start drawing our petal pieces. Because each of these is not entirely the same, I think it'll look a little bit more natural that way. So I'm not trying to make them all identical rose petals. And we're going to do the same thing on all of these. There's going to be 5 petals on this one, 4 petals on this one, 3 on that one, and 3 on that one. And it's going to be pretty much the same general process. Now I could just go ahead and cut these out straight and just use the paper pieces, but I want something a little bit more durable, so I'm going to glue this piece of paper down to something else, poster board or linoleum, and then I'm going to cut that out. A little bit of spray contact cement. Stick this down. Alright, and once I've got all those pieces cut out, that's my pattern for most of the rows. I did forget a piece. I need one little piece that becomes the, I think the term is petiole. It's the part that the outside green part of the rosebud that breaks open and the flowers inside of. I still need to cut one of those out. I'll just draw that real quick up on a piece of the poster board. Right, this piece is pretty simple. It's just a 4 or 5 pointed star basically. And we'll just kind of add our stalks in. These pieces go basically up and out to a point. Just a straight point. Might straighten that out a little bit there, but that's basically the shape I need. Okay, now that's all the pieces. Now that I've got all those, I can start cutting this out of leather. And the leather I'm going to use, I just dug into the scrap bin, and I've got some, it's about 2 to 3 ounce leather. It's really thin, and I find that works really well for these. You want something that's got a little bit of body to it, because you will be molding it and shaping it. So you don't want it completely floppy, but you want something pretty thin too. So it takes a little bit of getting the feel for it as to what leather you can use for this or not, because some stuff is too soft and some stuff is just going to flatten back out, and other stuff is just too hard to shape and form. It's either too thick or just too stiff. But this stuff should work okay here, and I've got a whole stack of random that I pulled out. We'll go ahead and get that scratched onto the leather with the scratch awl, and then I'll cut it out with a pair of shears or a pair of scissors. And in the center of each of these, I'm going to go ahead and use, I'm just using my scratch awl, but I just want to punch a hole through the center. You can use an awl, you can use a chisel of some sort. You want to be careful not to stab yourself in the fingers while you do it. A very important part of this process is not bleeding on the leather. But this is going to be the hole that our wire goes through when we go to put it all together. Alternately, you can make this center a little bit wider. You can punch a bigger hole. Well, this part's probably wide enough. Some of these may not be. But you can punch a bigger hole and you can put a concho in the center of it. And we've done that as well before. For people that want to use them on horse bridles or something like that. Now we got the pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and shape these before I paint the pieces. This one's going to be green. It'll probably just get dyed, maybe. The rest of these are all going to be white. So I have to actually use an acrylic paint to make a really good bright white rose. There is a white dye. It's basically just a thinned down acrylic in nature. So really it works best just to airbrush these with white acrylic. Or you can take and really thin the acrylic down. I mean, at least half and half water, maybe even 2 parts water to 1 part paint. And then you can just put that in a bowl and you can just dip these in there and lay them out again. That's a little bit messier, and that's actually the way my sister normally does it. but I have the airbrush, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But like I said, we'll go ahead and shape these first. And to shape them, I'm just going to wet them down. I shape the middle one a little bit differently than all the rest. And for the middle one, basically I want to roll the petals up with the each side, and then we can kind of put them together. One sort of goes in the center, and each of the other ones sort of wraps around it in a hug. And I usually press down just a little bit on the end, just to roll those edges out a bit. So we wind up with a shape just like the very center of a rose. Is it rolled out a bit? You can turn it the other way around where you have the grain side out or not. It really just needs to be kind of rolled out to get that shape. After that, each of the other ones, all we do to shape it is I pinch the end, I push up with 2 fingers on the back side and push down with my thumb on the front. And make a shape like that. So pinch the end, push up on the back and down on the front with the thumb. And you should pinch hard enough that you can kind of squeeze some water out of it. And then that piece will go around it like that. Pieces. You just kind of want to roll up a bit. Just sort of start at the end and curl them up, and then sort of uncurl them a little. And then you want to just cup it up a little bit. Now all of our pieces are shaped. I'm going to let them dry, and then I'll go ahead and paint them before I put them onto the wire. Normally you could paint them ahead of time. You can paint them while they're still flat. Sometimes the paint rubs off. Sometimes it doesn't. Like this, since I'm using an airbrush, I can have them already shaped. If I was dipping them, or if I was painting them, or if I was using dye on them that would relax it out a whole bunch, I would say that I'd have to paint them while they're still flat before I shaped them like this. But you can definitely see a little bit of how it's going to look when it's done. Okay, once we've got all the pieces painted, which they're nice bright white now with the acrylic paint, like I said, they can be dyed. Our red roses, we do use red dye and green dye for, but with the white, pink, yellow, it's better to go with an acrylic to get a nice bright color. And they're real simple to assemble. I've just got a piece of wire. This is just 14 gauge fence wire. You can buy a 1/4 mile spool of it for about the same price. You could buy maybe 8 or 10 feet of the actual floral wire that's made for doing flowers. And it's a stiffer wire, which is why I like to use it. Plus, I mean, it's cheap. And I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose pliers and bend a loop on the end of it. Grab that loop and sort of put it in line with the rest of it. So there's a nice little loop there. And then we're just going to thread each piece on, starting with the smallest one. Finally, our little green petiole piece. And now with all that in place, we'll go ahead and wrap it with some floral tape, which you can get at any craft store, and obviously in the fake flower section of them. You can usually even find it at craft departments in stores like Walmart or something like that. I got this particular batch from Amazon. And one last step is to use some leather sheen spray as a spray finish over top of it, because it gets into all those little cracks and crevices.